We have got some dangerous words here today for this video. We are talking about the most free-to-play solo dragon champion in the game. Now, dangerous being free-to-play, what does it mean? How is it categorized by people? It's a touchy subject. It's going to be different no matter who you talk to. It's clickbait most of the time, but I'm happy to tell you that this is going to be the exception. So let's dive straight into it. What up team, it's your boy MurderInc here, back with another Shadow Legends video. We are on the test server. We are talking about Mushroom Man. Yes, indeed, from the new Sylvan Watchers faction, we have Orn the Mushroom Man. Oh, well, his real name, Myciliac Priest. Beautiful word, beautiful word. Anyways, what makes him so special? We have an epic HP based champion, really good, 95 base speed. You would think that would be a problem, right? Everyone knows when you're trying to solo dragon, you need regen gear, you need high speed, accuracy check, resistance check. Some of that stays true to this champion. However, the parts that he can nullify with his kit make him so strong. And if you're endgame, don't lose faith, because there are builds that make him even better once you get over the free-to-play hump of using kind of lower quality gear here. So not going to go over his kit too much. Just going to kind of highlight a few points here. You're going to be disabling the A2 during these runs, which can make farming with food a little bit frustrating. What do I mean by that? When you set up the preset, you're going to have to put the food inside the preset when you start these things off. But outside of that, there's going to be no, I guess, need to have food. Some people, and it's surprisingly common, they don't use food when they solo dragon. They just don't. Why? I don't know. Is it efficient? Absolutely not, but I see it constantly over and over again from new players who have kind of been around for a long time, and then long time players. So either way you want to approach this is going to work perfectly fine here. So the main thing, like I said, the passive here, whenever a poison debuff is activated on an enemy, increases this champion's HP and defense by 5%, stacking up to 25 per round, which means wave in the case of the dragon, and resets each round, which is going to be very important. It also helps out with the survivability. Not that he needs it. His base defense is slightly lower, but that's not really the point here. The main thing is the A3 ability, poison sensitivity, poison on an AoE hitting ability, also healing this champion for each poison debuff placed by the skill. So we're getting kind of a lot of heals from this already, which makes sure you can get rid of the need for regen gear, which is kind of hard for newer players to get their hands on, especially good quality regen gear, which makes this such a free-to-play friendly champion. And he's an epic. He's not a legendary champion. There's an argument for Tomb Lord, since you can feed bad legendaries to get the life tokens to buy him from the shop. He's much better, as by the way, at farming this than the Mushroom Man is, but that's a legendary, so you kind of have to pick and choose. He does need books, and so does someone like a Tomb Lord, but as we know, epic books are much easier to get than legendary books. So let's go into this and kind of what I did here. We have the preset set up, and as I previously mentioned here, what you really want to focus on is getting rid of that A2, keeping only the A3 active as well as the A1 here. And we can kind of take a look at my stat. I'm going to show on the other screen just to get a better kind of view on this champion. So let's go ahead and do that. So as we can see here, I did my best to replicate free-to-play stats. Again, it's going to be a very controversial thing to say, but you understand much better once we do the run here. I'm not using a weapon here. I have a plus 12 5-star shield here, but the base stats are really important here. 62,900 health would be an issue. However, the base stats are very high, so this is much more achievable. Yes, I do have a great haul. I do have the arena bonus. I do not have faction guardian bonus because it's been so new. Most players won't, which is really good to be able to replicate. No empowerment, no blessing on this champion, which is definitely a possibility. 237 speed, not crazy speed. Most teams like this, you want 277, 280 in a certain type of gear set, which can be very strenuous on someone that has an underdeveloped account. 237 is a walk in the park. Now, if you're looking at this and saying there's no way I can hit these stats, you're probably not to the point where you're fast farming stage 25 anyway, so you don't have to worry about this at all. This is for players who are already on stage 25. This isn't going to be like a Eurogrim situation where a Void Epic comes out of nowhere, cleaning house, speed records, the whole shebang, then gets nerfed to the ground. Rest in peace, gone but not forgotten. We will never forget, trust me. So with that being said, we went slightly over the resistance because I had to allocate some stats to make sure the stats were as low as possible. We hit the accuracy requirement for this. So let's get into the run here. I'll show you the masteries briefly. We did elect to go with War Master here because he's hitting on all of his essential skills, as opposed to someone like a Eurogrim that did not hit. He simply applied poisons, and the fact that it's AoE, you will get a lot of mastery benefit as far as damage goes from this champion here. The rest is pretty self-explanatory as to what I took and why I took it. So with that being said, let's dive straight into the dragon run and we can see what we're working with here. Now, since the stats are a bit low, this is definitely limit testing. What do I mean by that? You will know and notice at some point, I don't know if it's this wave, I'm pretty sure it's the next wave, where his health is going to drop slightly low. But as we can see here, that A3 is practically a full heal onto this champion here. Why is this good? And kind of why did I pick this speed? As you'll see here, just before you think he's going to die to some combo of champions, he uses his ability because his speed was tuned to a certain number, as I showed you already in the gear, where he's always going to use that A3 just before it looks like he's gonna die, which is huge, right? So as you can see, definitely not the fastest run, but that's kind of where this shines here. If you're just progressing, you're really looking for a champion to shine, and this is what I talked about low health here. If you got a few crits in and a few more crits and less weak hits, his health would have been lower, but he would not die. That's the main thing important here. I had to run this probably like 100 times to figure that out, but it's okay because we have that down. So the main point we're going for here is we don't really care about how fast this is, right? If you're moving on to getting your first solo farming champion, speed's going to be the last thing on your mind. You're going for efficiency, the best use of energy you can possibly have. As we can see here, we got to the dragon pretty damn slow. A minute and 15 seconds, a minute and 20 seconds. I can tell you for a fact, if you're watching this in your end game, the run would already be over with the other sets I'm going to talk about and show you down the line. So no worries about that here. Like I said, this is a little bit slow here, and it looks like we're going to get a kill at around just under 2 minutes. This is going to be faster or on par with many kind of players that just reach the stage 25 level of dragon. So the fact that one champion can do it with relatively low gear requirements is very, very strong. So kind of just to give you some background, some players might still not be convinced seeing the stats, thinking they're a little bit high despite me using plus 12 and all of this. Yes, I have 6-star gear, legendary glyphs on them, but what really makes this free to play, and I kind of hinted on this before, it's the fact that you don't need these niche sets to make it work. Other champions, if you don't use sets like Regen, Immortal, Frenzy gear, it makes it very, very hard for you to have a successful run. And not just a successful run because you can get lucky, and I've seen other content creators make videos where they get lucky, but it's a very low win rate. This is 100% win rate. You don't need the special gear, and consistency is going to be key. I've said it a billion times in this game. There's nothing more important than consistency. So now that we kind of got the breakdown of what you can use, I'll show it one more time as far as the minimums you're going to want. 237 speed. I really wouldn't go lower than this because this is the sweet spot right now. You can go, I would say, it's hard to say 237 is the hard stop. What if I'm at 236 murder? What if I'm at 235 murder? I've not tested that low. However, based on the turn meter bars that I have observed in the fights and based on the health of Mr. Mushroom Man here, I can say with decent confidence that you will be fine if you are at 235 speed, 236 speed. If you start dropping below 230, that's where things can get a little bit dangerous. I can tell you for a fact, I've tried 218 speed and I have died. I was successful quite a few times, but I did die, and that RNG is not worth trading off as far as a consistent run goes. We already established the resistance is a bit high, it does not need to be this high, you can check sheets for that. The defense, you want to get to as close to 3,000 as possible. I was a bit short here. As far as HP, you can go slightly lower, but not too much lower. I would say 59,000 would be the lowest you would ever consider running on this champion. As we can see, I ran 63 and everything was relatively smooth here. So that being said, my endgame players, where are we at? How are you guys feeling today? You can do some pretty interesting things with this champion. Now I'm going to break down the sets for you. This is one of those things where there is no ceiling to building a solo farming champion. You can build it with as good of stats as you want. The main thing that's going to hold most players back is going to be the accessories here. It's going to take a while to farm since it is a new faction unless they do some type of Plarium, smart idea. Make an event that gives a higher increased chance of dropping the Sylvan Watcher's accessories. Bam! That would make things so much easier for the player base while we try to get this faction up and rolling here. So endgame players, stun set I found incredible results with. The fastest stun set run I personally had was 1 minute and 17 seconds. Is that close to the fastest farmers in the game? No. But if you weren't lucky enough to get them, this epic is knocking on the door. If you're endgame whalish, you're pulling shards, you're probably gonna get this guy. So with that being said, if you run a stun set, the recommended stats are going to be 260 speed or higher. No limit there. There's no really, I mean, you can do 237, but you're really aiming for those fast runs, and you can definitely farm the gear that's good enough for that if you are endgame. You do want to try to stay at 220 accuracy and not much higher than that since you don't want to waste too many stats there. As far as the health goes, same thing applies. 60,000 is fine, 59,000 is fine. You have a lot of playroom with his survivability due to his passive and due to the insane healing this champion gets here. Now, if you want to get crazy, the fastest run I did total was 1 minute and I want to say 3 seconds. Good RNG. However, I built 100% crit rate because I noticed this guy hits kind of hard, right? He's an HP scaling champion. He only needs 85% crit rate to crit 100% of the time in the dragon. So if you have 70%, 65%, you're going to have a very high crit rate because you can add an additional 15% to that. And all of this damage adds up for sure because his animations, let's be honest, are not the fastest here. So using a stun set and using the other 2 slot options as your flex options, rounding out the rest of the build, highly recommend it for sure here. I wouldn't deviate too far away from this. Definitely take War Master. I've tried it with War Master, I've tried it without War Master. The damage difference is insane because of his AoE ability. Turning off that A2, proccing War Master on all of the enemies over and over again, that damage adds up and it cannot be competed with something like Oppressor here. Timely intervention if you have food with you. Elixir Life's irrelevant here. Fearsome Presence is kind of a good talking point, but it is not strong enough to outweigh the additional damage from War Master here. And then as far as the support tree, you can customize it as much as you want. Charged Focus is good if you're running short on accuracy since he's just using his A1 as well as his A3. So every time he uses his A3, there will be no skills on cooldown since we are blocking off that A2, giving you an additional 20 accuracy. However, I really wouldn't look at that too much because you're going to lose some accuracy and debuffing strength on the dragon once you start using the A1 there. So this is going to be the pretty standard, in my opinion, setup here. If for some reason you're struggling at survivability, do not take away from the support tree. It's pretty important with Master Hexer, as well as Sniper giving you an increased chance of placing the poisons for the A1 specifically on the dragon. Of course, it helps in the waves. I would sacrifice the extra damage, deal with the faster time, and go down the defense tree, taking Tough Skin, Blast Proof, Resurgent. Cycle of Revenge isn't going to do much for you. Nothing really is on this row here. You don't want him counterattacking because the animation is quite slow, but if you have to pick something you don't like the red dot always on your screen, you can just go ahead and take Retribution or just a random point like Selfless Defender here. Alright guys, so as you saw, this was probably one of the lower ends of the RNG that you can get. Minute and 31 seconds, much to improve on the gear for sure. Like I said, we don't have the empowerment bonuses going on if you are endgame here, so this can be a bit lower. With the right RNG, like I've said, you can get some crazy low times. And the fact that this is a minute and 31 on the worst end of the RNG shows you a lot about this champion. While it's not consistent as far as times go, with the current unoptimized gear set that I do have on him, it can certainly give you some very strong times with a champion you have to invest very minimal gear into. So with all that being said, I only mentioned the stun set. The other really strong set wasn't quite as fast as stun, as you can probably imagine, because if you stun the enemies, they're not taking turns, which means no animations, which means faster run overall, which cannot compete with reflex just using that A3 more times, because the enemy animation turns heavily outweighs you being able to use that A3 multiple times here. So reflex gear would be the second strongest gear set that I found personally, and then falling much further behind would be something like relentless gear. Relentless gear is much more common, however it cannot be farmed, but if you're endgame you probably have enough relentless gear. Now if you're hearing some of these gear sets and you are kind of on that free to play threshold, not so much where you're actually free to play, it's kind of like a term now used for players that don't have the best gear. Why? I don't know, I don't make the rules, I just follow them. So if you hear any of these gear sets and say, wait a minute, I have some of these sets and they're very strong, you're doing that much better. Throw on one of these 4-piece sets, use the other 2 sets like I said to kind of fill out the stats you are missing for this, and you will have such a good time using this champion here. Now the only thing I have to talk about next is going to be books. What do we want for books? The A3 has to be fully booked. The fact that you need 2, 4, 5 books for this A3 makes it hard to say it's not going to be book heavy. You don't need it on the A1 despite the A1 being used, and you don't need anything in this A2 ability here. But listen, we are gambling here. If you hit 5 skills back to back on the A3 game set match, you have the craziest budget champion you can imagine. Is that realistic? No, the odds are very low. You're probably going to hit A2 once or twice, the A1 once or twice. If you get unlucky, you're gonna have to fully book this champion, but I'm sure he can be used in other places just as well here. Alright guys, so that's gonna conclude this video here about Mr. Mushroom Man, Myciliac Priest Orn here. Fantastic champion. You can get away with all kinds of builds with this. It's not gear intensive. There's no heavy requirements for this as far as gear set. So listen, I approve. I really like this champion. He looks cool. He's fun to watch. Not that people watch when they farm, but give me your thoughts, give me your feedback on this champion. I don't think he's going to get nerfed. I don't think he's that good, but he does offer that really unique budget option for sure. So give me your thoughts and feedback. If you enjoy this content, smash that like button, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and I will see you all in my next upload.